Hey, out there in the crypto world, one more time with DeFi IoT Latin America. Today we're going to bring you some news on the Helium, the news from the jungle, the Helium jungle. What's going on with Helium? What's going on with Ihub? And there's a lot of regulation coming down. We're kind of at a standby right now. Congress keeps suspending the date for voting because they want to make sure these laws pass. And in this new bill, this infrastructure bill, there's a direct attack on crypto. How's it going to affect us? Where do we think we might be able to get through and wiggle through? There's a new world computer Davos is trying to create that will actually take over the internet. So it's going to be very difficult for blockchain to even exist inside that without being centralized. Let's talk about that. What's the future hold for us? Is there hope? I think so. Let's talk about it. That is a carrier, a cell phone carrier that's going to actually implement Helium in their country. All right. But also something about this 5G I want to talk about. Gig Sky, if you look at this here, last week announced the first batch of 5G gateways. We're talking about this, right? Let's go on here. The first gateways already went out. They expect to have 40,000 of these 5G gateways connected. And the company, right here, Gig Sky is Helium's first 5G mobile plan. In other Helium 5G news, Freedom Fi also announced that Gig Sky, an MVNO with connectivity of 190 countries. So this is a cellular plan that has connectivity in 190 countries. So Helium's 5G will also earn Helium. If you look down here, just the beginning of what's possible for decentralized wireless network owned and operated by the people. Read more. So you can talk about here, 5G gateway operates on HNT for data transfers. So that'd be more data transfer that's going to take place. So you're going to have a 5G out there creating data. Then it acts as a data transfer. Will it act as data transfer for 4G that are around it? I don't know. We have to look into that more. It could possibly be another option for 4G like we're seeing with Senate to actually process more data. I don't think that would be a huge difference, but we can continue looking at it. Let's go here and look at Liechtenstein. This is a country here that I didn't even know existed. It exists between Austria and Switzerland. It's a small country here. Vaduz is the capital city, but Liechtenstein exists, and they will now work with Helium as a mobile coverage, a cellular coverage. Helium is advancing. We keep going on. Let's jump into now some things we should be concerned about. More regulations coming down. These are some of the positive things, and I think Helium has a way to get around some of this regulation. I want to talk about some of the regulations coming down in brief. This is another video, but at the end of this, I want to also say why, explain why again, why I think Helium is maybe with all the regulation coming down with the cryptocurrencies, there are going to be a lot of them are going to take a fall. A lot of them are going to get washed out in the next 3 months to this next maybe 6 to 9 months or 12 over this next year span. But I think it's going to be sooner than that. I think we're going to see it happen in the next 3 to 6 months. You're going to see a lot of regulation coming down, both in the United States. The Biden administration is very much, they say they're not anti-crypto, but they are very anti-crypto. We got to read between the lines. And we got to read between the lines what I'm going to show you right now, too. There's another task force out there that's very anti-crypto. Besides the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, there are others because this is threatening them. Now, what's interesting, though, is the banking industry is being threatened. Governments are supporting that because you have these central banks. But in the United States, you have the Biden administration now selecting a person, I won't go into the politics on this, that actually is very anti-independent banking, very central banking, very much a type of philosophy that I'm probably shouldn't mention here, but an ideology, better said, that is very much a Marxist ideology, we'll just put it that way, where they want to make the Federal Reserve now the central bank. And remember something, the Federal Reserve is semi-independent. It's influenced by the government, but semi-independent, and most of those people in the Federal Reserve, we don't even know who they are. Okay? They keep that secret. That's scary when you have somebody could sit on a board that makes decisions for banking with our money, our economy, and we can't know who they are. Right, as American citizens or even in the world, because what the United States does affects the world. In the Latin countries, what the United States is going to do right now, a lot of these countries are going to adapt the same laws, and it's going to be very, very easy for these other organizations that we're going to talk about right now, for this other organization, the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, if you will, FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, they're going to be able to now spread that influence throughout the rest of the world. This is all part of the Davos Group plan. Now, just keep this in mind. The Davos Group, the World Economic Forum, has an agenda to implement a world computer, a supercomputer that they've been working on, and that they plan soon that will take over the internet as we know it. Blockchain we many think blockchain is the future, but they're going to do something that's going to be able to override blockchain. Now, I'm not sure if that's the quantum computing we're talking about. I would imagine maybe there's some there, and there are some algorithms to protect that. Will there be some avenues that we can maintain our privacy? I think so. We'll see what's going forward, because DeFi really is something that was created by people who desire to have the free market, have their privacy protected, and want to maintain their private property. Speaking of private property, let's look into what this Financial Action Task Force really stands for. First of all, this task force was set up for money laundering, right? It's also known by its French name, Grupo d'Action Financière. I don't speak French, obviously. It is an intergovernmental organization founded in 1989 on the initiative of the G7, right, the G7, to develop policies to combat money laundering. In 2001, its mandate expanded to include terrorism financing. And then they've continued to expand on that. I'm not going to go completely into them today. That's a whole other video. But I think we need to be very aware of what's taking place. What's going to take place in the United States is going to set precedents. What takes place there, this Financial Action Task Force is going to implement throughout the world and their affiliate agencies. Let's take a look at that real quick here. Let's just jump into that, because I think that's going to be very important for all of us that are in Helium or in crypto world at all. And I think this pertains to Helium, and that's why we're including this in this Helium segment. Look, if you can go and look at it's FATF, their website, direct with them. Here's some things that they have, the whole list of things they're doing, right? What should individual governments be doing about it? So they can go through and they can explain everything. Should governments with measures in place still be concerned, etc.? You go on here. So you can go in there. They'll talk about what is money laundering. They're going to explain everything, and it really makes it sound like they're really protecting us from some really bad people. However, you got to read between the lines here. And if you really look back too, and I got to say this because I hate to do it, but look at history. I'm just going to take history, for example. We look at how Germany fell under Hitler. Italy fell under Mussolini. You had the whole Stalin regime, and you had this whole fall of the former Soviet Union. All that was done under the precept of protecting us from others that were bad people amongst us. And so the government, Big Brother, would oversight us. Now, this administration, the administration of the United States of America, Joe Biden administration, is not hiding the fact that they want to implement a Big Brother policy. They're not hiding that whatsoever. And in this infrastructure bill, it's directly attacking cryptocurrencies. You need to do your homework and read that. Remember, we are not financial advisors. We're here to educate, share with you our experiences, and to entertain. I know looking at me has got to be definitely entertaining. I mean, I don't have to put anything on, and I get called a clown. Hey, be careful now. All right, so what does this task force actually do? Well, first of all, we didn't vote them in. We didn't vote in any of these actual people that represent the world governments that want to now take over and establish our policy in each country. We didn't vote in them. There's no democracy in this whatsoever. So we need to be clear on that. And DeFi was set up. Bitcoin was set up originally to counter this type of control. And just taking a side break, you really need to educate yourselves. I know some of you are very well educated, but you really need to educate yourself on why Bitcoin and blockchain was created in the first place. Why you're getting involved with Helium, not just for the money. I hear that all the time, money, money, money. It's not just for the money. You get a compensation for doing your part, but you got to do your part. And if you don't know what your part is, how can you do your part? And then we're going to have a problem. Then DeFi could collapse. DeFi could be taken over by the Davos group and the governments locally. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot on that. I just want to say here that, look, virtual assets, they're out to attack virtual assets. All right, so if you want to look into what they're saying here, go and look at it, but read between the lines. They make everything nice and fluffy so it's protect us. Okay. In my time as a CEO, I dealt with banks. I dealt with central banks in Latin countries. I've lived in 4 of them. I've dealt with the central banks. And in those central banks, more than once, our company was offered money that I didn't think came from very reliable sources that they told me not to worry about, that they would just deposit in our bank accounts. Private loans, we didn't take any of them. But I want to let you know that the banking industry is not about protecting us. And money laundering takes place in dollar or in gold, and always has, and they can't control any better. Terrorism is financed through many different aspects, and it's financed by countries, and we know those countries, large countries, that actually support terrorism. And they pay directly, or they give them arms. There's other ways to support terrorism. It's not cryptocurrency. Can you actually move money in cryptocurrency and support terrorism and launder money? Yeah, you can, but you got to pull it out somewhere. So that's the part that's very difficult. When you pull it out, it has to come out through the banking system. So you can say, well, they can move the money real easy. Well, that's true. They can move it real easy. But when it comes to pulling it out and making that payment, that's very different. That's a different structure. Now, you can do that with countries that are aligned with supporting terrorism. They'll let you pull it out there. And ironically, some of those countries you're going to note right now, we're going to go through where this FATF exists. Some of those countries have 2 or 3 layers of this regulation that actually protects or monitors money laundering. Is it really monitoring money laundering, or is it monitoring that the people can't do anything, but the governments can? It's control factor. And I think would be, if you do your homework, you'll lean more towards the fact that it's a control factor. Let's go through this. You see this talks about the virtual assets. They're going to attack them. This was in June of this year. There's more coming out in October. The Financial Action Task Force goes through a whole list of their agenda. If you look at this, revisions to Recommendation 24, white paper for public consultation. Now, this white paper actually goes into talking about legalized persons. Well, it's very just kind of difficult to understand what a legalized person is. But if you understand also business, when you form a business and you legalize that business, it gets a number, right? And that number makes it a legalized number. So it's like it's a separate person. If it went to trial or to a case, that company is tried for its assets and what it does. Now, whoever's running that company can be tried as well and can be held accountable as well. But generally speaking, if somebody is held accountable as an owner of a business, and that business is a type of a corporation where it has a protection layer around it, then the business is a separate entity, and it's considered a separate entity. So what you're looking at here now is we have people and entities that exist, and both of those have tracking numbers. United States, Social Security; in other countries, a cédula, right? Or in for example, it's a cédula jurídica in Spanish. If you're down in Latin countries, the businesses, or we have a tax EIN number, right? In the United States. So you have these businesses. Now, if they're not separated out, then it's all in one. But anything that's transaction over type of transaction or ownership inter borders, now the task force wants to attack. That means property. Is cryptocurrency a property? Well, most are deeming it yes. And that's something that we have to look for in regulation. Will it be considered a property? It's a virtual asset. It's just virtual. It just exists out there. But will it be deemed a property? Most likely it will be in most cases already considered as it is a property, because you have that, you obtain that, and you can buy an NFT, for example. Well, that's a property. That's crypto, that's encrypted, and it's a property. So how is that going to affect us going forward? Well, I just want to mention that there are these task force. There's various. There's the FATF right there, and you see all these organizations that are actually in bed or form the same purpose in the countries. And you can go through all these countries. Nearly 200 countries have these established. If you go through here, it's funny, and you look at this, the United States have 2 layers of these policing agencies for terrorism and money laundering, right? And the other thing that's kind of funny too is Russia has 3. And if you go all the way back up to China, go up to China here, you're going to have 3 as well, which is the most. Well, that's kind of ironic, being that those are more of types of governments that are, well, more communist-dominated governments, and they more control the people. And yet, if they can have so much control of the people, why would they have the need then to worry so much about terrorism? How often do we hear about terrorism in Russia or in China? You generally don't. Usually hear that terrorism has a backing behind it. I won't go into that. That's a separate issue. You can see these agencies, there are various branches of them. In Ecuador, there's a branch, but it's not actually FATF. Ecuador is the branch of the GA, FILAT. And you can see here, where is it at here? Let's go through here and see where Ecuador is. Going down a little bit. El Salvador has one as well. El Salvador, let's go up. What's El Salvador have? El Salvador is the CFATF, right? And El Salvador, by the way, as a side note, has been a huge success. It really has been. They got things ironed out, and they've been huge success and huge example. And that's where I think we're going to come to here at the end of this. Let's go into, you can see, here's their actual report. The report that was done in June. You can see here, this was updated June of 2021. You can go through the report. It's the FATF recommendations. Remember, read that between the lines. They make it sound really pretty. But what it means is this. I want to show one thing here where it talks about the banking industry. I think it was in this page here, if I'm not mistaken. Transparency International, I passed it up already. It was a different section. But what they talked about was they said, well, we're going to be very fair about the virtual currencies. I think it was back here. Let's go back here real quick here. Back here. Yeah, I think I moved my page already. Virtual assets right here. FATF has issued global binding standards to prevent the misuse of virtual assets for money laundering and terrorist financing. Well, remember something. A terrorist now in the United States of America is a poor mother or father going to school and trying to defend the rights the United States Constitution supports. That's where we're going with this. So terrorism is very broad. If you're against anything that the governments, world governments, or country governments are their agenda they're trying to push forward, you could be considered a terrorist in the future. Now, if they pass cryptocurrency laws and you try to maintain in DeFi, you could be considered terrorist on the road. I'm not saying you will be, but the way things are looking right now, it's very possible that you will be classified as a terrorist. So here's something else that's concerning. The standards ensure the virtual assets are treated fairly. Fairly, well, that's a very broad word. Fairly according to whose standards, right? Applying the same safeguards in the financial sector. So in other words, we're going to do the same thing in the cryptocurrency that we've done to the banking industry and the financial sector. We're going to control it all. We're going to allow the elites to prosper and the poor to not be able to take advantage of golden opportunities because they are not credited investors. Look, there is hope. And I think that there are certain cryptocurrencies that are going to survive this. ADA, Cardano could be one. I think that Vitalik Buterin, and I know I'm slaughtering his name, but I really don't care because I really don't care for the person. What a crybaby. Bitcoin has a success in El Salvador. And because it wasn't Ethereum, he's out bagging on Bitcoin, saying that's oppressive. It's not right to force the people. They're not forced. Vitalik, get your facts straight. They are not being forced to take Bitcoin there. They have the option. They can use the dollar or Bitcoin. The only thing that's obligatory is that the stores have to accept Bitcoin if somebody wants to pay it. And there's nothing wrong with that. They have a platform that stabilizes that. And actually, if you notice, when on the September 7th, when they went Bitcoin, the big banks and financial institutions tried to dump Bitcoin and tried to just punish them. And it didn't work. In fact, Bitcoin going up as it did, they made $400 million in profit from their investment in the first month of being out. Hooray for El Salvador. Now, what they're going to do with that money, what Bukele wants to do with the money, is build a pet hospital that actually has theater rooms in it for the pets, which I think is a little bit out there. I think he needs to stay focused and take that money and reinvest that and not get too happy. Put that money away. Put aside for rainy days. Bitcoin will come back down again. We know that. So don't just go spending it all. Where I think our good news is, I think Helium has a good chance. I think Helium's going to continue to decentralize as they're doing. And even with the groups of Ihub and so forth, they are decentralized. They're giving more and more of their reliance to corporations and governments. And I think that's necessary. Their competition's Amazon Sidewalk, amongst others, and they need to grow this out. I think the iHub's a great possibility for them to grow this out. I know there's a lot of people that are poo-pooing on iHub, but the one thing that they have to admit is that iHub is not a fraud. iHub is for real. I personally had a conversation this week with the co-founder of iHub and Mr. Michael Stern. It was a great conversation. We talked for an hour comparing notes. The 6th of January, I was able to be invited to the VIP session of iHub's launching where they're first going to put out their first miners. Excited to be there myself. The person is going to be with me later in an interview today. Also, one of our partners is going to be with me there. And so it's going to be exciting to be there. So we're physically talking to the people that actually run and own Ihub, which is fantastic. I'm telling you, it's a really good idea, a real good deal, and you can make some money at Ihub. And I think that Helium, though it's going to become more decentralized, the end of the day, the power is with us. We can always disconnect them if they start to abuse that, right? So I think there's your security measure. Now, can you say, well, they'll pay people off? Okay, but enough people can cause enough holes in that system if they try to abuse the power, both governments and Helium or any other organizations aligned with them. So here's what I like about Ihub. And the one thing about Ihub I have to say is this. You have the opportunity, actually. If you get one miner and you hook it up, you're not going to make as much money as you buy your own hotspot. That's true. But you get a free hotspot out of this. So here's the deal. You can build a team. You can build your teams, and in teams, you can actually make good money. Now, I'm still seeing a lot of numbers being thrown out there. I saw something last week thrown out there of a hotspot. Somebody looks like they're gaming or spoofing, making 300 and something HNT in a month, which is not going to happen. With the new POC V11 taking place, that's going to be nearly impossible to do. The thing is that we're not going to be spoofing or gaming. More rules are going to make this a fairer game for everybody. And countries like China cannot do that anymore. Well, at least we hope they're not going to be able to do that anymore, because the existing hotspots with that implementation of the software, which we hope takes place even in China, will then limit them and cause them to become honest. And we hope that's what Helium is doing. So at the end of the day, if you develop a team, you can find your team. We're going to do other videos on the teams for Ihub and be producing those over the next week and 2 weeks. We're going to wait to get some clarifications. This is actually from Michael Stern himself, something that talks about how you're doing your teams, your pro team, your bronze team, your silver team, your gold team, what you can make from 15 to 25% here, up to 35% on your people you bring in, like 26 people and over, etc. There's commissions in there. Now they say that, well, it's not pyramid marketing. It is and it isn't. I'll be honest about it, because the way it's structured, you want to bring in more and more people, so that way it does kind of make a pyramid out. The thing is though, everybody can make the same amount of money, and that's what's nice about it. I've heard some guys, YouTubers, talking about that, well, I don't like Ihub. I think that, he'll even go and say, well, I know they're not a scam. I know they're real deal, but I don't like the way they're doing the politics on it. They're making too much money off it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they're the ones putting out the money to put the miners in place. And actually, if you understand their structure right, you too can make money in Ihub, putting your hotspot in place, as well as helping other people put their hotspots in place and helping build those teams. And you make a percentage, a commission off of each one of those. Ihub is a great opportunity. And I think Helium is going to be a blockchain that's going to survive all the new regulations coming out. We here at DeFi IoT Latin America feel that Helium has a way to wiggle through it. And they started their inception off with Sean Henning's experience at Napster with that in mind, of government regulation coming down and changing on them and be able to move themselves through it. It will decentralize to some degree. It's going to have to. Let's be honest about it. But I think there is a great network we can develop. And I think it's a great network that we can have control of. So we should develop that, and we can get compensated for doing that and get compensated well. Now, how we're going to go forward with that, with more antennas and how these rules are going to apply, we're going to teach you. Every Tuesday, the Helium news from the jungle here at DeFi IoT Latin America. Please stay with us. If you like what we're telling you, hit the subscribe button, click the bell, so every time our new videos come out, you can be there to get updated with us. We do our research. We're not financial advisors, but we seek out to understand the best we can. We pride ourselves in being investigative reporters in the blockchain, in crypto world, and to bring you what we discover in real news. Give us a thumbs up. Write something to us. Please let us know your comments. We want to hear from you. DeFi IoT Latin America. We'll see you next Tuesday.